Are you willing to create slow evidence that it might possibly be true? I had zero evidence that I could become one of the best marketing coaches. Zero evidence, zero. But I'm like, am I willing to create and have slow evidence? And I'm going to say messy imperfection is really the way to go. I was willing to do it imperfectly, messy, half put together. And I was like, the best way to get data is failing and implementing and refining. So this is how you do it. You have to be messy. Perfectionism, you cannot play that game in entrepreneurship. You got to start increasing your tolerance for failure and disappointment.
How did you become that person? I feel like there's a backstory there of how you got into being this person. So I'd love to. There
is a backstory, and it's kind of a painful backstory, but I was a hairstylist for 15 years and social media was just kind of a fun thing for me. And then I was selling a product online, kind of like affiliate influencer marketing. I was in social selling through a direct sales model. And I was like, I saw how it was done in 2012 when people started to come on scene using social media to leverage that particular business model. And I can sum it up in one word. It was cringe. And I watched it and I was like, there's got to be a different way to market and use this platform in a way that doesn't feel gross and inauthentic. And so I kind of went on a quest and I kind of bootstrapped growing Instagram, figuring that out. It was kind of just a mess, doing giveaways and just kind of schleppy ways to get to, right. I think it was like 15K followers. And I part of my book is I burned myself out bad, trying to just hustle for numbers, hustle for followers. And I only saw things being done one way. And that's finally when I was like, there has to be another way for us to use social media in a way that feels good, both to the consumer and the seller, in a way that feels good to everybody. So, because now, it's so normal, it's not taboo anymore. But when it first came onto the scene and people started selling a product online, people are kind of like, oh, you're selling a product on social media, on Facebook? We're here to just connect with college friends. And it's like, no, right. Now we're leveraging it differently.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I mean, the reality is and I tell this to businesses a lot, and we have an agency track in our platform that teaches a business model that's based on this reality that not being out there with your products and services is really almost not even an option at this point. I mean, if you're just like, no, I'm only doing the Yellow Pages and Chamber of Commerce networking, you're making your life really difficult. And anecdotally, so you said you made this kind of pivot in 2012. That's when it started?
Oh gosh, no, that was when I started. That was when I kind of watched, and then I made the pivot. Man, when did I do that? Probably in 2018 is when I kind of went on my quest to searching for, there's got to be a different way than how I'm seeing business sold, how I'm seeing marketing sold. I was really disgruntled. I was burnout, disgruntled, disenchanted, whatever you want to say about it. I was kind of maybe even disgusted a little bit and being like, there has got to be a different way. So I would say 2018 was when I really started going deep and thinking about there's got to be a better way to do this.
So I can't wait to compare notes from 2018 forward, but I have to give you interesting timeline coincidences. So 2012, I had been an affiliate marketer since 2008 and was really thriving through search engine marketing. And then Google adjusted their algorithms to, they called it the Google slap. They basically made affiliate marketing on the Google search pages nearly impossible. And I spent a year with all kinds of gray hat shenanigans trying to stay ahead of the Google bots. And that became painful. Although it was really successful because everybody else just quit trying and I had a wide open field, but I had to I basically had to be a computer scientist and a hacker to stay up. But anyway, that's apropos of nothing. The point is 2012, I saw what you saw and I was just I don't want to do that. I don't want to be. And that's when I just quit and I went and started a digital agency. I was like, I'm just going to, if Google doesn't want affiliate marketers, but I know Google, then I'm just going to go sign up small businesses and help them do Google because I don't want a damn thing to do with this social media thing. I don't really want to connect with my old friends and I don't want to be the schlocky guy. So, and then in 2018, to kind of match up again with you, I was like, wait a minute, I think there's an opportunity to do this in a different way. And I had, and I had just sold my agency. And so I came back online. And frankly, now it's interesting that we were sort of discovering this at the same time. So what happened in 2018? I want to hear what happened for you.
Oh man, 2018 was the year I kind of read Seth Godin's books. I kind of learned more about the art of storytelling. And I just thought, and I kind of watched particularly Instagram start to take a turn away from such like the curated magazine grid. I started to see a turn, and I started to notice, I think people are wanting to feel a little more close to the user, a little more friendly, up close, and less curated, and this less cringy feel. So I started looking at storytelling. I started studying a lot of psychology, and I was like, why are we not infusing this into social media in a way that is organic without, paid ads? How do we do this? And so it started really messy, very clunky. And I was bootstrapping at the time, like literally was doing this kind of as a hobby on the side while I was still working as a hairstylist. And it was 2019. That was when pedal really hit the metal. I was like, okay, I'm going to try a few of these unique things. I'm going to try this on Facebook, and I'm going to try this on Instagram and see what happens. And that's when I really started noticing traction. And then I started presenting it to a few people. I'm like, hey, try this. Cause I wanted to be like, you know what? If the format only works for me, then it's a me thing. But if this is a format that actually works, then I can duplicate this and teach it. And that is exactly what happened. I had other people test it and it worked. I'm like, okay, this is a duplicatable framework that literally anybody can use to leverage social media in a way that makes sense and that feels good. And then, 2019, 2020, that was when my universe exploded.
Well, okay. I'm excited to hear. I love a good hypergrowth story. So I'm excited to hear 2020, but to stay in 2018 for a minute. So, and kind of just tease apart some of what you said for people that maybe don't have all the same frame of reference that we do. So when you're talking about a less curated, kind of less stylized and glamorized grid, you called it, can you translate that for people that know nothing about marketing?
So at the time in 2018, when you would gain a follower on Instagram, they said you had roughly 10 seconds to gain a follow, and how the person decided if they were going to follow you or not was based on a 9 square grid, 3 rows of 3 pictures across. And it was the first 9 squares they saw of your Instagram. And at the time, it was like a color theme. It was highly aesthetic, and it looked like a curated kind of like magazine grid. It was incredibly intentional, very well done. But most people, when they thought about growing a platform, a lot of people, unless they had like professional photo editing software, and that is when Lightroom presets, I don't know if you remember this, but on Instagram, that is how a lot of people were monetizing on Instagram at the time, was they would create their curated grid, so to speak, and then people would love it. And then they would sell Lightroom presets in order for other people to emulate the grids. And that's when I noticed, I don't think this is sustainable. I don't think people want this. And that's a change I saw. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really interesting if you think about it. I mean, sort of to dig deeper into the philosophy of what Kristen's talking about. Sorry, I'm talking to the audience, like of what you're talking about. Is like you land on an Instagram profile, and I remember people used to be so intentional about it. It would be like a mosaic where they'd be like black, white, black, white, black, white, black, white, black, and like their whole posting strategy was this like long form artistry of like maintaining these patterns in the grid over. So you would scroll and it would look like a chessboard because it was black, white, black, white, black, white. And it's like, this is so intentional. It is so inauthentic. Yeah. I don't feel like I'm on this life journey with this person where they're like, today I had shitty service at lunch and like, don't shop here. Like you want that level of connection with people. And it became very binary of like, either your social media is authentic and sloppy, or it's inauthentic and commercial. And you're saying 2018 is when that wall started to come down.
That's when I think it started. It was very small, but that is when I saw it started. If you were to scroll way back on my Instagram, you could see I had that mosaic at the same time. And I'm like, this is terrible. But what's funny is that like it became how that read was unrelatably authentic. Because if you think about influencers, what they're trying to leverage or present is authenticity or originality. But when you have something overly curated, it becomes unrelatable, does it not?
Totally. Yeah. Because people's lives are not organized and beautiful.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And frankly, the average person scrolling social media looking for a life-changing opportunity, or whether that's a new cosmetic to help them feel more confident, or a new pill to help them lose some weight, or a new program to teach them a skill to help them quit their job, or, everybody. I mean, the basic audience of social selling is people looking to make significant changes in their life. Usually they're like, it's their life. They're trying to clean up a mess. So they're not going to relate to someone that doesn't seem to have any mess of their own.
Exactly.
So it's interesting because now if you fast forward to now, and this is maybe a great entry point into like, what do you do and how do you teach people to do it, is like, you're trying to present. First of all, even the term present has an inauthenticity about it, but we're all trying to present, right? None of us are completely unselfconscious. And so to the extent that we're trying to present simultaneous, like, I'm real, I'm relatable, I'm a mess just like you, but also in at least one part of my life, I've got something figured out that could maybe help you too. And I'm going to present that part of my life as well. So like, it's actually a very difficult equation. How do you solve it? How do you help people solve it? How did you solve it initially? And then now how do you help other people solve it?
Yeah. So at the beginning, just with social media, I think there wasn't a lot of talk about like, hey, understand your niche, your specific value that you offer to a very, very specific and unique audience. It was just kind of like try to be all things to all people. And that creates a lot of mental fatigue because the brain doesn't know where to focus and it doesn't know what to create. So it also creates curator fatigue and creator fatigue. So
you mean fatigue on both sides, creator fatigue and consumer fatigue.
Exactly. Yeah. And so because the consumer doesn't know where to focus either. So, one of the first things you have to solve is like, okay, well, what unique value do I want to offer to a very specific audience? And when you have been trained to show up on social media to be all things to all people, suddenly your brain absolutely shuts down and thinks, well, now I'm going to lose all the money because I should be selling to all the people. When instead, when you can figure out, okay, what is my unique life experience, my unique skills, the unique value that I can leverage that would really resonate with a very specific demographic and target audience, or what you might call your niche or your niche. And so that was when I introduced like, okay, I'm going to niche I think it was beginning of 2019, end of 2018. I was like, all right, we're going to do this niche thing. I'm going to go all in. And I think I lost like 5,000 followers overnight because before I was just talking to anybody, just moms with kids, whatever. And then it's like, all right, we're going to talk about personal development. This is all we're going to talk about. And I literally lost like 5,000 followers in a 30-day period. I was like, all right, here we go. We're in. But I rode out, and a lot of people are like, well, how did you have so much success so fast? I'm like, well, how many people do you know would spend a year curating content, figuring out their audience, figuring out value, coaching people for free, testing things in the market, and not make a single dime and stay with it? How many people would you know would work for a year and not see a dime? I'm like, well, that's a good point. That's kind of what happened.
Well, and by the way, that's how I launched my company. I did it for 10 months before I actually put a course together and sold anything. Same thing. I built I built a 2 million person retargetable audience on Facebook and Instagram with the Pixel of people that had just watched my videos. I never sold anything. I had no calls to action. I never asked for anything. The only thing I ever said is, hey, if you like what I'm saying, follow my channel and give me a like and I'll give you more. And like the goodwill that we built up is what becomes the springboard into lower reduced resistance selling. Once you actually you package your value. So I know one person, but to your point, I don't know many.
And there are very few people that will. And it's you playing the long game. Most people, if you think about it, when they go into entrepreneurship, they're into the idea of changing their present life and whatever problems they're currently feeling as quickly as possible through the route of entrepreneurship. So that's why most people don't play the long game.
So this was 2018. What had you been doing prior to that?
I was a hairstylist for 15 years.
So you were not, because I'll say for me, I had just sold my agency. I was 39. I was basically considering a pseudo retirement. Like I didn't have like $100 million. I wasn't going to go buy an island, but like I did well enough that I could be like, I don't really have to work that hard. I might just chill. And so I was in kind of a unique position where I was like, okay, I'll take a year. I'll take 2 years. I'll take whatever it takes. And I'm going to do this almost as an experiment. I'm going to play the long game. I'm going to go full Zig Ziglar and just focus on helping as many other people as I can get what they want, and eventually trust that that'll mean that I get what I want out of the whole thing. And so I had kind of a unique circumstance that allowed me to take a very low pressure approach. That was, it sounds like you didn't have that luxury. You were a hairstylist trying to make a change. So where do you think you came up with that discipline?
Yeah. So let me frame that even more so. Hairstylist, primary earner in my family. My husband was unemployed at the time, and I had a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old. Okay. So let's just frame that.
So everything you're doing part-time while you're still working, cutting hair or styling.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. But I was so in love with the long game. I was like, however long it takes. And I kind of viewed my hairstyling career as my primary investor in my dreams. I'm like, that's fine. Yes. I'm here. This is predictable income. It's not a problem. And again, I wasn't looking for the fastest exit possible. I was just looking for what was sustainable, what felt purposeful, and what I love doing. And one of my, I guess you can call it my litmus test that I did for myself. I was like, okay, if I'm not willing to do this for free, I probably have no business doing it. So I'm going to see if I still love it while I'm not making any money, then I know this is for me. And so, yeah, there I was, like when I had clients processing color, there I was offering value online, talking about personal development. And it was even a joke with some of my clients. They're like, hey, when you have a book someday, I'm going to come and sign it. I'm like, you better believe it. I'm going to have a book someday. And so my clients knew, I knew. So I was literally putting in the time, even while feeling financial pressure in my life. I had to keep focusing on like, okay, it's only painful now. I know what I'm working on. And so I had insane mental discipline, but also because I was just in a posture of like, let's experiment, let's have fun. And I'm not interested in burning myself out getting there, because I had done that before when I was going through affiliate and social selling while also being a mom. Burnt myself out so bad. And so I was like, we have to reframe this in a way that works. And so, did it. And then it went crazy.
Yeah.
After a year. So it was like 15 months of like just serving people. Literally, here's what I did. This is crazy. I saw someone struggling online, and she had built a course and she couldn't sell it. And I maybe had a couple of exchanges with her on Instagram, and I sent her a message. I said, hey, I'd really like to see you increase your sales. Can I help you? I'll talk with you. I'll meet with you once a week. We're going to improve your marketing. I know if we just cleaned up these things, you'd start making money for free. She's like, what, are you crazy? Sure. Sure enough, she started making money, and I kept doing it with a few more people. I'm like, can I help you? And I was testing it. And sure enough, those became my first paying clients when I put together an offer.
So I'm like, I'm not going to be able to find it. I just picked up my book. And I'm trying to go through, there's like this thing in here somewhere. Like I said, I'm not going to be able to find it. So I don't even know why I'm bothering. But it's like this chapter about getting started. And it's about getting started when you have no previous experience or no, call it confidence. I'm still like telling myself that I'm going to find it, and I need to just abandon it and accept I'm not going to find it. But anyway, those of you that have read my book, you know the chapter I'm talking about, where I talk about the perception paralysis loop, where it's like, I can't do the thing because I'm scared to do the thing because I'm paralyzed by my insecurity over not having done the thing. But if I would just do the thing, then I'd develop a track record for doing the thing, and I'd feel more confident, and I would do the thing. Right. And so in it, I actually script out a hypothetical example of a person who's starting an agency that's never had a client, that's never had a retainer, that's never produced a result. And it's like, if you've never done it, this is the pitch you use, where you take the fact that you haven't done it and you make that your strength. You make that your USP of like, hey, if you go sign up for some big established agency that has 100 clients, your client number 101, how invested in you are they really? Whereas if you take me on, or you let me take you on, 100% of my future results depend on me being successful for you, because you are going to be my testimonial when I go produce an ad to get a paying client. Right. And like, I wrote that, but I'm saying this because you lived it. Like, I'm just going to start telling people, skip the chapter, go watch my interview with Kristen Boss, because she proved it. That is so cool. So is that what you did? you took on a free client to produce a case study.
Several. I did them in multiple business demographics. I did a photographer, I did an interior designer, I did a hairstylist, across the board, and direct sellers and social sellers. So I was like, all right, I'm going to take all these people and all these demographics and do the principles still apply? Does the framework still apply? And let's revisit again. I was a hairstylist for 15 years. All I had was a deep understanding of like buyer psychology, consumer psychology, and listen. Actually, the value was I had spent 15 years listening to people. So I understood people really, really well. I'm like, I may not understand everything about marketing, but I know people. And I was self-taught. Literally at night, I read marketing books. I was like, I wasn't in masterminds. I couldn't afford to be in masterminds. I was literally so broke. I said no to guacamole at Chipotle. I was like, nope, can't do that either. But I was like, I know I created a 6-figure business in hairstyling. I started an online clothing boutique and we broke even. Okay, there's skills here. And so, self-taught, but I'm like, okay, I'm just going to keep doing this in all these different frameworks. And then eventually I had proof of concept. Then I had experience. I'm like, I know it works. I have proof of concept. I have people that will buy it. I had been spending a year developing some credibility and offering nothing but value online to a specific demographic of people. And I remember the first thing I did was I was like, I'm just going to host this crazy 3-day live event. I'm going to give all my goods away. I'm going to tell everything I know to people and I'm going to help them as best I can. And then I'm going to sell on the back end of that a coaching offer with me. So if people are like, well, I don't have money for advertising. Listen, I did this all without paying a dime for advertising. I don't think I paid for Facebook ads or advertising at all until I made $300K organically with a very small audience. So I kept going and I hosted that masterclass, and then I blew my own mind and I had $25,000 in signed offers after 18 months of literally nothing. Then 3 days, do an offer, 25K cash came in and my brain melted. I was like, all right, let's go.
I'm so glad we're talking about this. I had, there's a few people that I've had this kind of same conversation with around the long game. So I'm sure Alex Hormozi is.
Love Alex.
Yeah, I love Alex. Yep. And I met Alex. In fact, my wife and I had dinner with him and Layla in Vegas several months ago. And we were talking and he was like, Jeff, he goes, the reason when I saw your stuff, because I mean, Alex is blown up, right? Like he gets bombarded, he gets hit up, same as you, I'm sure. But I had messaged him and he pinged me back and he's like, dude, yeah, let's meet. Like, come down to Vegas. Next time you're there. And he's like, the reason that you got my attention, the reason that you stuck on my radar is because I heard you in an interview basically talking about how you launched Entra and how you really weren't in a hurry. Like you didn't care if it took a year or 2 years or 5 years. And like you were talking about thinking in decades. And he's like, that's how I think. And I think and that was just sort of a confirmation for me. And like, now we're having this conversation. I remember I had a conversation with a guy. He was the number 8 person who was hired at Microsoft. He was a business unit leader at Microsoft. He ran a $10 billion division of Microsoft. And it was the same conversation. He's like, a year is nothing. Like a year schmear, man. Like, look, a year went by. He's like, let's talk decades. I think there's a wisdom around talking in these longer, extending your time horizon. And it is so rare. And it is getting rarer in the like goldfish consciousness world that we live in. The TikTok has brought us from like 60 seconds to like 15 seconds or whatever.
Oh, we're 8 now.
Mm-hmm. We're at 8. Yeah. And it's so rare to think long game. But if you think about it, I said this, I think I said that, I don't remember where I was the other day. The present and the future are literally the same thing, just at different times. Mm-hmm. And so to artificially, abstractly, and I would argue illogically prioritize the present as having any more intrinsic value than what will be a present in the future it's just silly. And I get it. We're biologically wired that way. It's like stay alive now, procreate now, perpetuate DNA now, don't die now, danger now. But like at some point, can we just stop being cave people and like actually think and actually just play the long game as a society? Like, is it really that hard?
Play with our primal instant gratification brain that's always telling us I need to have it and have it now. But this is why this is why people don't play the long game, because I think there's just a massive urgency to get away from temporary discomfort that's happening in the present. And they don't realize that pain is still going to be waiting for you, even with $1 million.
I'm so happy we're talking about this. Like, if you've listened to my stuff, you know, I love pain. I love discomfort, because it tells me, it shows me the intensity of feeling that's possible, good or bad. At least I know how wide the range is, and it makes sure that I'm not dead, or I wouldn't be feeling it. I mean, there's like so many wonderful things about it, and it ensures me that I'm not in my comfort zone.
Yeah. And I want to say, if you want to have a lot of success in entrepreneurship, you have to increase your capacity and your threshold for pain and discomfort. And if you are only about getting out of your present pain as quickly as possible, you won't know how to play the long game. You won't know how to weather storms. You won't know how to position your company for the future. And I think I can thank my hairstyling career for that, because I had graduated from the most prestigious hairstyling school. It was Vidal Sassoon. And I thought I was hot stuff when I graduated. I'm like, it's going to be great. I'm going straight to, because I had an A-list clientele. I was in Hollywood at the time. But when I graduated, I thought, that's it. I'm going to get my chair. I'm ready for the A-list celebrity to sit in my chair. And I went to the salon, and they're like, yeah, you know what you're doing? You're starting at minimum wage. Mm-hmm. And you're going to be an apprentice. You're going to shampoo hair, and you're going to sweep, and you're going to be under these master colors because you know nothing. And it was humbling, but it was some of the best training I ever got. And I had to play the same game with entrepreneurship. It was just like, you know what? I'm going to sweep. I don't know how long I have to sweep for. I don't know how long I have to earn minimum wage and not see massive rewards, but I know that I'm willing to be an apprentice so that I can eventually be the master. But everyone wants to come into entrepreneurship and immediately be the master. They want the millions, they want the master, but they're unwilling to do the painful grunt work that often requires a long-term mentality, which is why I have very little tolerance for people that just want it fast, where they're just like, I just want to skip that. I'm like, this ain't for you then.
So I have a theory on this, because I mean, we're touching on, I mean, there's a lot of variables. There's a lot of important sort of philosophical underpinnings of success, but I don't think there's any that are more important than this. And by the way, I think science agrees. The number one thing that's been identified as a predictor of long-term success is your ability to delay gratification. That was the Stanford marshmallow experiment taught us that, right? And so, and if you don't know what that is out there, Google Stanford marshmallow experiment. You'll read, like, basically, if a kid can say no to a marshmallow for 10 minutes, because if he does, he gets a second marshmallow, then he's like way more likely to be successful and stay married and not get on drugs and be in good shape 30 years later. I mean, it's crazy, all the things that behavioral trait predicts. But anyways, so I have a theory on this. Sorry, I blanked out for a sec, but here's my theory. And I talk about this in my book. I'm sure some of it is just like innate. Some people are just better at delayed gratification than others. But I think a lot of it comes down to life experience, and in particular, hope. So there was an experiment in the 1950s by a psychologist, I don't know, behavioral psychologist, animal psychologist. I don't know exactly what he was, but he was at Johns Hopkins, and his name was Kurt Richter. And he did these experiments in the 1950s where he would drown rats. And so he would throw a rat in a beaker of water that had straight sides, like the rat couldn't get out. And he would time how long would the rat swim before it would just give up and let itself drown. And the rat would drown typically after about 2 minutes. A rat would be like, this is pointless. Nobody's coming. I give up. And he would drown. And then he started reaching in and saving the rats like 5 seconds before they were about to give up. And he would pull them out. And he would be like, okay, you're saved, Mr. Rat. Good for you. Ha ha, just kidding. And he would throw him back in. But now the rat has a belief. If I tread water, I might get saved. And how long would they tread water now? Take a guess. Before it was 2 minutes. But now that they have some hope, how long could they tread water?
2 minutes and 20 seconds. 30 seconds longer. That's my guess.
Days.
What?
Days.
What?
1,000 times longer. There's 1,440 minutes in a day, I think. So like literally their endurance went up 1,000 times with just a little bit of hope. Talk about delayed gratification, right? So my thesis is humans, if we believe that it will pay off to stay in it, I think we have 1,000 times more resources, a deeper reservoir than most of us tap into. I just think we live in a world that, and I think some of it is cultural. I think some of it is a narrative. I think some of it is reinforcement. I think some of it is a crappy educational system. I think some of it is a lot of inherited trauma in families. And there's a lot of reasons for it. But I think fundamentally people just kind of like, there's no point in being gritty because it's not going to pay off anyways. So why try? And so my question is, why aren't you like that? Why were you the rare one that was like, I don't care how long it takes. I'm going to do it until.
If you were to ask me a couple of years ago, I really believed in the inevitability of my goals. I was like, there's just no way. The only way it won't happen is if I stop. The only way it won't happen is if I give up. And so I was so sold on the inevitability of my goal that I surrendered the timeline. And I think when we surrender the timeline, we have all the power, because then we're serving from the ultimate posture of service. It is like Zig Ziglar. We just want everybody else to win because it's no longer about me winning on my timeline, because I think that's going to take care of itself. And I knew for me at the time, like $1 million was like money I couldn't even think of. I was like, I know eventually one day I'm going to make $1 million. Never in my wildest dreams, while I was out serving and giving value and surrendering the timeline, did I think I was going to have a $10 million company in 2 years? Never in my wildest dreams.
So where do you think that came from?
Man, I was super gritty. I had a lot of delayed gratification also in upgrading my lifestyle. So when I tell my students this all the time, I'm like, y'all, go look at some of the old stuff that I filmed for you and look at the room I was in. There was holes in the baseboards. There was dog stains on the carpet. It was dark and I didn't have great equipment, didn't have great light, camera, and sound, none of it, because I was so busy investing my money into the future, into masterminds, into coaches, into networks. And like, I didn't go out and buy the car, the designer bag, or the house. Like I waited because I'm like, I know where I want to go. And I'm more interested in, and I said this to someone the other day, I was like, as an entrepreneur, you value your experience of wealth more than you value the appearance of wealth.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want to be bothered with the appearance of it. I was like, now I know where I'm going. So there I was with literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash, brand new. And I was like, no, I'm not going to redo my baseboards. I'm not going to do this because I know where I'm going. And so it was delayed gratification, not just in like the career and how that was going to look, but even like with my money, with my investments, with assets, all of that.
So you're like, I mean, you know, a little bit of context, and most of my audience knows this. I mean, I run an education platform called Entra. We've had 271,000 students now in 4 years. So I have a pretty large base of data of like, here is a pretty big cross section of humanity coming into a platform, looking to change their life, looking to alter their trajectory. Some people need it right now. Some people have a long-term horizon. Obviously, there's many more of the former than the latter by default. I mean, we work on that. That's something we talk about. I have men, I have women, I have 95-year-olds, I have 19-year-olds. I have like just a lot of data to view. You are like the archetype of who's going to come in and be successful, right? The grit, the delayed gratification, the focus on service, the willingness to just keep going until the, frankly, natural exuberance. I mean, you have kind of like a glowing personality. Like you're not a person that acts shy and calls it modesty to make themselves feel better, like a lot of people do. Like, you're like, first of all, if there's like 100,000 of you, I hope they come join Entra because I can do a lot with that. But But I mean, I guess more importantly, like first, two-part question. A, is there any more you can say about, did you just come out of your mother's womb wired this way? Or did you have any life experience that affirmed like sacrifices are worth making because they do pay off if you give them enough time? And also, how do you personally deal with people that are not as much like this? And do you have a process for helping people mature in terms of their expectations and their time horizons? So those are that was a two-part question.
Yeah. So first question, what life experiences did I have to kind of rely on that or create that grit and have the delayed gratification? I would say, my hairstyling career was probably because of where I was at and how I approached my apprenticeship. It was the same thing. I was
how old were you when you, I don't mean to interrupt, but how old were you? Actually, I do mean to interrupt. Sorry. I hate when people say, I don't mean to interrupt.
I was 20. How old was I? I was 21.
Did you have anything earlier than that?
Oh gosh, what did I have? Oh,
they say that
I talk about this in my book. Okay,
they say basic traits of personality are installed by 10 years old. That's why I'm asking.
My father was an entrepreneur, so I watched that man work really hard. So I think that might have been a little bit of it. I think maybe I know what it was. I was a volleyball player, and I talk about this a little bit in my book. And I was not someone that had all the natural skills. And I was on a team where there was a lot of people that had natural talent. And I realized I had to work a lot harder in order to earn playtime. And I was really obsessed with becoming a front row player, becoming an attacker. And here I am, like 5'6" front row players. They're at 5'10", 5'11". I'm a shorty. I'm thinking I'm going to get up front because I deemed that as the most valuable position on the team in my mind. And I went and got a trainer, and he immediately told me, he's like, you're not a front row player, you're a back row player. I was so dejected. I was like, what? This is terrible. And it wasn't until I went to a UCLA scrimmage and I watched the libero, who is a defensive specialist on the team. I watched her crush it on the court. I'm like, okay, that actually has high value to the team. So once I perceived my position to be of value, I decided I'm going to work at this. And I stopped working to be to be the front row player, to be somebody I'm different. I was like, okay, what's my natural talent that I need to leverage? And so I'm like, I'm going to leverage being a back row player. I'm going to be the best one I can. And that's where I put all of my focus, all of my time. I stopped trying to improve my jump. I stopped trying to improve my hitting. And I was like, okay, I'm going to work on my serve and being the best passer. And that's when I became like, best all league by my senior year, because I outworked everyone on my team, and I decided to live into that position. So I think I took that experience of like, what does it look like to leverage your talent and go all in instead of stop trying to be something else or develop a different talent. And I became the number one defensive specialist all league and in that division as well. So I think I did take that with me into this concept of entrepreneurship as well.
There it is right there. And by the way, the principle and the belief that you developed as a result of that experience is true irrespective of that experience. Mm-hmm. In other words, and the reason I say that is for somebody listening, they're like, well, I didn't have that experience or anything like that. It doesn't matter. You don't have to have that experience for what Kristen said to be true. Mm-hmm. Now, you might need the experience for it to already be true for you. But if it's not, so what? Start now. It's still true. Hard work over a long enough time horizon inevitably pays off. That is just a fact. Like, and by the way, if it doesn't, why are we even here? Like, I don't know, just stop breathing now. Like, it's like people, they're like caught in this existential tension of like, well, good things don't happen to people that delay gratification, so I'm not even going to try. Well, then like all we're doing then is just dying slowly.
I'm going to even offer something a little crazy, maybe to someone that's in our audience. It's like, no, literally, I don't have any stories. There's just no way, because I know that I have my own students I teach, and they're always going to be someone that's like, no, you don't understand. I don't have those experiences. This is the second question, basically.
It's like, what do you do with people that just like don't accept these beliefs?
Yes. Yeah. So what I would ask you is, are you willing to create slow evidence that it might possibly be true? And that was for me. I had zero evidence that I could become one of the best marketing coaches. Zero evidence, zero. But I'm like, am I willing to create and have slow evidence? Am I willing to do this one thing? For example, that one person I coached for free, that was building slow evidence. That was like, okay, I helped her. And it's very easy when we have one win for our brain to dismiss it and say, it was a fluke, it was a matter of luck, timing, circumstance. But if you actually own the result, the moment you own it, you think this can be duplicatable and therefore I can replicate it. And so I decided I'm going to create this piece of evidence and therefore I'm going to try this again. And the more I do, and I'm going to say messy imperfection is really the way to go. I was willing to do it imperfectly, messy, half put together. And I was like, the best way to get data is failing and implementing and refining. This is the only way I'm going to move forward. And that was what created the slow evidence. So this is what I teach my students. I'm like, listen, B- work, C's get degrees. This is how you do it. You have to be messy. Perfectionism. You cannot play that game in entrepreneurship. In fact, you gotta start increasing your tolerance for failure and disappointment. Otherwise, maybe this isn't for you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I by the way, I really do believe that in life, your A's tend to work for your B's and your B's tend to work at the companies that are owned by the C's. But it's interesting too. I think an additional layer I would add to that. And again, I'm asking like out of deep self-interest, like I am always trying to improve our ability to inspire people to unlock their own possibilities, irregardless of their backstory or their background or their pre-existing beliefs, right? That's essentially the key to entre success, right? Is like, how do we get more people enrolled in what's possible for them and willing to do it until? So thank you for the free consulting, by the way. Yes. But one thing I would add to that is a lot of people think that their beliefs about about their future in the present are based on their experiences in the past. Mm-hmm. And I would say your belief about the future that you hold in the present is not so much formed by what happened to you in the past. It's formed by the repetitive thoughts that you've been having about what happened to you in the past.
Correct. How in other words, the past.
It happened to you once. Okay, whatever. But the 9,000 times that you've dug the groove in your mind that says, that is my identity, that is my reality, that is my truth, and that is my future if I try again, that is what has made you so self-doubting. That event by itself had no power. It's the 9,000 times that you processed it to reach the same conclusion and installed it as software in your brain that is now why it's your truth. And so the reason I say that is, to your point, you can have a different thought, but you still have an 8,999 thought deficit to rebalance the equation. You're going to need to have that new thought a few times, maybe a few thousand times, for it to start to get some traction, because you've already punished yourself 9,000 times about what happened and formed a belief around that. And so, like you said, are you willing to slowly gather new evidence? It can be as small as, are you willing to slowly start to have some new thoughts?
And I would notice this is when people tend to be quite ungracious with themselves, or they shame themselves for having certain thoughts where they think, I should be past that thought by now. Why is this thought coming up again? I thought I've already said this. I've done this before. And it's like they think there's an arriving when it comes to personal development or even their thoughts. And I notice this happens with my students as well, is they'll put in the time with a thought and they'll be like, okay, I'm going to try this new thought on. And eventually they're surprised when down the road, that thought is still lurking around a year later. And then all of a sudden there's this shame that comes in. And then they think, oh, I'm a fraud. It shouldn't be this way. This is terrible. The thought is there. It's like, no, you're just a human. And you still have a lot more, again, if you're still in a thought deficit where you've just thought the other thoughts more, the majority of your life, it's not going to go away in 2 years. And so I think it's seeing the thought, but not giving airtime to it. This is what I see a lot of entrepreneurs do is for example, they see a thought come up. And they're like, oh, it's my self-worth. for example. And then what I see them do is I see them stall out everything in their business and they go solve for the self-worth. Like, I'm going to go fix my self-worth. I need to go on a healing journey. I need to go on reflection and journal and white light meditation and, work on my trauma. But they stall their business. They stall their growth because they do not believe they can be healing and growing at the same time. And then because they've stalled it and they've gone on this journey to figure out their self-worth, suddenly their business isn't growing. And now they're like, it is because of my self-worth that they never move forward.
That is profound. Oh my gosh.
I'm so like, you don't need to go on an origin story with your thought. You don't need to be like, where is that thought coming from? I need to go and understand it to understand the root of it. No, you can just see the thought, see it for what it is and say, okay, do I want to give airtime to that? Yes or no? And what will it cost me to give airtime to that? And I can still take messy action while having that thought buzzing around in the background still.
Oh, that's just so powerful. The dynamic tension between healing and growth. And it's like, you don't stop one to do the other. It makes me think about, so I used to, I studied Brazilian jiu-jitsu for a while in my 20s. And I really thought I was getting pretty good. Like, I'd been studying for like 6 months. So anyway, I had some moves, right? And then I started grappling with the instructor. Because like, I was okay when I was with the other beginners. But as soon as I got in on the mat with the instructor, everything I'd been practicing went out the window. And I immediately went back into like a fetal protection mode. And what I learned from that was practicing a skill is there's an environmental context aspect of learning a new skill. And what that was 20 years ago. Now I apply that to business. And what I realize is I might deal with my self-esteem issues. I might deal with my trauma. I might build up my self-confidence for where I'm at right now. But as soon as I succeed and I go to a new level, now I'm on the mat with the instructor. I'm facing better competition. And all the fears are going to come back and all the traumas are going to come back. And I'm going to have to readdress them at the new level. New level. Yes. They say new level, new devil. Well, in a way, new level, same devil, just new clothing.
Smarter devil.
Yes.
Smarter
devil. So it's like you're never going to get your healing done because as soon as you succeed, you're going to need to do it all over again for the new level that you're at.
And this is where entrepreneurs freak out because they're like, I've gone backwards. Something's gone terribly wrong and I try and prepare my students for this. I say, listen, this is going to be your battle your whole life and every level in your entrepreneurship journey. It's going to be the same story. It's just going to have a different flavor. It's going to have a different texture, but you're going to find it all boils down to the same story over and over again.
Yeah.
And learning to have radical compassion with yourself is what will allow you to grow even with your stories. But it's when we let shame take the seat that we stop growing, we stop progressing. We don't move forward anymore because we've made ourselves wrong essentially for just being a human and having the human experience.
Yeah. They talk about fear of success and people are like, oh, I'm not afraid of success. And I'm like, okay, I agree. Empirically, you're probably not afraid of success. But what you are afraid of that you may not realize is you're afraid of the fear that's going to come back if you experience success. So it's not fear of success. It's actually fear from success. Right. And so like, you got to start getting ready for that now. And I think it's so interesting. And so I'm curious for you, I mean, rather than maybe talk about it abstractly, like I have a great living case study about this in the hot seat here, Kristen Boss, who has achieved massive success in the last 4 years from very humble beginnings. You now have one of the best known podcasts in your category. I'm very envious of you on that, by the way. I'm working very hard to catch you. You have a 8-figure company. You have far more success than maybe you ever really saw yourself with a few years ago. How are you grappling with the fears coming back? Because I'll tell you, I mean, from the level you're at to go to the next level, like shit's getting pretty crazy at that next level. So how are you dealing with the fears right now?
Therapy. But It's true. I mean, like I tell everybody, I'm like therapy. It's just, what I've been saying is just radical self-compassion, working on understanding my nervous system, working with my nervous system. Yeah. And I tell people, like, I really believe growing your income and growing your success is built on your ability to grow the capacity of what you can put on your nervous system. So learning to be with yourself when you are feeling massively afraid, when you're feeling really triggered, when you feel intense anxiety, learning to self-regulate, self-soothe, have support. Because if you can't trust you with you, then of course you're not going to trust you with you at the next level. So I think self-trust has been like a massive part of this journey, and constantly an exercise I do that is just very healthy for me is I regularly burn my business down in my brain in the best way, being like, okay, if it all went away, what would you do? If it all went away, how is it still worthwhile? If it all went away, how is your life still good? If it all went away, how are you still a significant person in the world? So just working on detaching my worth from my business psychologically, mentally, emotionally. And that's what my book is about too. That really, it has been helpful to me because honestly, people are like, I want to make $10 million overnight. I'm like, no, you don't. You want to test that on the nervous system?
Yeah. Oh man.
It's like success whiplash for sure.
Yeah. That's so interesting. I mean, it's funny. You mentioned therapy. I literally have an email from 5 hours ago where I added our chief of staff to an email with my therapist, booking out all our sessions through November of this year. I literally just booked all my therapy sessions for 2023, like 5 hours ago.
See, it was like total confirmation.
But I love what you said. I'm stealing it, by the way. Consider yourself flattered via imitation because I am stealing it. Success, I don't remember exactly. Success, income growth, and so forth is largely a function of increasing the capacity of what your nervous system can tolerate. Correct.
Yeah.
Oh man. Because it's true. I think about like my first events years ago when I would go and I would see people on stage and I was like, oh, I want to be up on stage. But was I really ready to be up on stage? I would have been terrified. I would have embarrassed myself and then be like, oh, I wasn't ready. I never should have gone on stage. No, I had to develop my nervous system to be able to handle that. Ditto for a podcast. Ditto for publishing a book. Ditto for being the CEO of a company with 250 people on staff. I get on a company-wide meeting now. Just saying hello would have broken me 10 years ago.
Oh. Being a CEO would have broken me. I woke up, put 2 feet on the floor one morning and said, I want to be a coach and I want to help people. There was no thought of being the CEO of a company. Like that has been massive growth for me. And so, the load on your nervous system, it is very real, and learning to like care for yourself, be aware of it, understanding your own fight and flight responses and how you bring that to business. And so really, you have to learn to be the higher evolved creature in your business and being like, okay, if my primal brain runs the business, God help us. Help us, because all it's interested in is survival. That's all it's interested in. So it doesn't make the best decisions from survival. So it's about learning to access our prefrontal cortex a lot faster and being the higher reasoning human when our nervous system is triggered. And so I don't know about for you, but do you remember how your nervous system felt your first massive launch where you saw like money you'd never seen before? Do you remember how that felt?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So for me, it was in spring of 2009. I had just started my affiliate marketing business. And bear in mind, I've been an entrepreneur for like 13 years. I dropped out of high school at 16 to become an entrepreneur. So it wasn't that I was new to risk. I was just new to risk actually paying off. And in a few months, I went from I made like $2,000. And then I made the next month, I made like $8,000. And then the next month I made like 25. And then I went to 40. And then I went to 70. So it was but in June of 2009, I made like 70 grand from affiliate marketing in 1 month. That was more money than I had made in any year of my life prior to that point. And I was 30 years old. And my brain just completely fell apart. Yeah. It's like, I don't have the words for it. I'm still fumbling for the words. So
yeah, I remember for me, when I had my first massive launch, it was a $250,000 launch. And it was a launch born from like, I just want to help people. We'll see what happens. We already hit a yearly goal. Why not? Let's just do it. $250K launch. And mind you, as a hairstylist, like $100K, working on my feet 12 hours a day, literally having to work hard, trading time for money. So when I saw $275K come into my bank account in 48 hours, I had a panic attack in the middle of the night. Like I couldn't get my breathing under control. I was freaking out. I was thinking about like, the 275 new students that are now under my care. Like that was my first, oh crap.
Yeah, and to be clear, that money like that doesn't come with no strings attached. It comes with customers.
Oh yeah. Exactly. Right? Exactly. So now it was like, now I have 275 people I got to take care of. What if I remember my brain just spiraling, like, what if all 275 ask for a refund tomorrow? What if it all goes? But again, I remember that being my first massive nervous system overload with success and money. And I had to regulate that, because if you can't regulate that, guess what's going to happen? Your primal brain's going to override it, and you're going to self-sabotage, and you're going to be telling yourself, we can't have all that success and all that money. Because remember last time we had a meltdown. This is why people stall out. Yeah.
And by the way, this never stops being true. I will just say, like, for where I'm at right now, I've given myself some very specific, very audacious goals for the next 3 to 5 years. And I know that the biggest battle that I have to fight is to keep myself from sabotaging the becoming process of becoming the person that can pull off what it is that I know I'm intrinsically capable of, but I have to deal with myself along the way.
Amen. You said that so well. I'm going to steal that. Be like, yeah, the only problem I foresee having, because same thing for me, next 5 years, like, scares me a little bit. I'm like, the only thing that's going to get in the way of that happening is me getting in the way of my own becoming, for sure.
Beautiful. Hey, so I know we're technically out of time.
Yeah.
But I'm coming on your podcast in a couple of weeks.
I know, we're going to have fun.
We should pick this back up.
Be like, part 2. Let's do it.
Part 2. Oh, I love it. I love it. Hey, Kristen, seriously, I wish we weren't out of time, but I know we are. Thank you so much. This has been amazing. Thanks for being a guest here.
Such a pleasure. It was a blast.
So talking about the frayed nervous system, I know that your book, Pivot to Purpose, talks a lot about this, about not burning yourself out, not overstimulating yourself with adrenaline and cortisol and all the stress hormones, which is a good segue to, please talk about your book. Tell people how they can get it. Tell people how they can follow you on social, all that good stuff.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at the Kristen Boss. You can find my book, Pivot to Purpose, on Amazon or your local Barnes and Noble. It's currently trending. I think it was number 4 in work-life balance on Amazon. So it's a goodie. You can go online and get that. You can also, I have a free money journal, because a lot of people are like, how did you become safe with money? I'm like, oh, well, you could just grab my free guided money journal. It's in the links in my Instagram. You can also go to my website, kristenboss.com. Lots of good stuff there.
If you loved that episode, then you're definitely going to love this one. Check it out.
There is a point where the pressure is so high that you have to make a choice. What do I need to do to survive now mode? And you push everything else away. And that's when you surrender. And within the surrender comes the turn.